Hey guys, today we have Jessica Sorentino. She's been working in the publishing industry for over 10 years now. She spent time at Simon & Schuster and Macmillan Publishers, and now she's a brand advisor and strategist dedicated to helping authors find their very own author brand. Jessica is constantly reinventing herself, which she'll talk about, I'm sure, in a little bit. Welcome, Jessica. So happy to have you here.
Hey, Jason. Thanks for having me. Hi,
Uh,
everybody.
Of course, of course. So I always like to start these interviews, like hearing your story, like learning about like where your kind of your origin story. So I know that you have been through a series of steps in your career at this point, but I guess like how did you get started in the publishing industry, and then how then did you find yourself as this suddenly as this branding guru? So if you could just take us a little bit on that journey, we're just curious.
Sure, of course. So I always like to say that when you work in marketing or when you're dedicated to marketing or any sort of brand development, you have to be quick on your toes and you have to be open to transformation. This is a really hard thing for people. It's very difficult for me too to have to grow in public. By no means am I famous. Do I have a big following? Nothing like that. But if you constantly wait until the project you're working on is 100%, by the time you are ready to put it out there, the world has shifted a little bit more, and now maybe the way you're sharing it is going to change. So, something that's really important and exciting when you are telling your story is that your audience is excited to hear it too. So, my story started at Simon and Schuster. I majored in communications in college. And then I always like to, networking is a huge deal. It's really important. I always knew I wanted to be in the media industry. I thought it would be
Hmm.
magazines, big reader, but I thought it would be magazines. Um, but I nannied after college and I nannied for somebody who worked at Simon and Schuster, whose husband worked at Random House. So all of a sudden I was like engulfed into this world of publishing and it was absolutely glamorous to me. I would take their children to the city to meet with them and see the office. It was just a wonderful sort of shift in my vision. Um, from there, I went to grad school, but after grad school, in grad school, I studied psychology. So I got that like consumer mindset, that emotional connection. So everything that I do now with authors and even still at Macmillan is about how can we emotionally connect readers to stories. And that is a huge thing for me. So it comes from my degree in communications and my degree in psych and just sort of tying it all together into a very unique way of branding and marketing. But when I had graduated from grad school, I reached out to the family and the mother who worked at Simon and Schuster helped me get my resume in front of somebody there. So
Hmm.
every time I tried to thank her for getting me a job, so to speak, she would say no. She was like, all I did was put your resume on a desk. The rest was up to you. So I love to tell that story. I still network. I host branding workshops for resume building back at my old college at the University of Delaware, because branding is the new resume at this point too.
Hmm.
So when I do, I like to tell them that story because it really is so important who you surround yourself with. And you never know who the people you know. And that is crucial at any stage, whether you are in the college stage or the author stage or wherever you're at in your life. Um, Fast forward, started in Simon and Schuster, spent a lot of time there. I think I was there for about 5 years. I loved it so much. It was such a wonderful experience. But this was around the time that digital was starting to move forward, and I was getting really good at blog slash Instagram. Um, and a lot of people started asking me for my advice on how to use theirs. So I decided to take a leap of faith, quit, and start my own like branding agency. That was in 2019. I have been doing that since. To this week, we actually launched our first official rebrand. So everything I had done, I had sort of scrapped together by myself. And now 6 years in, I was able to give my business the brand of my dreams, which was so exciting. But along the way, a couple years ago, Macmillan had reached out for one of their projects and became one of my clients, which is unusual. Normally, my clients are authors building personal brands. Um, but how do you think, like, that was so cool. How would you say no to that? You don't. And it ended up being such a wonderful experience that now I work with them full time as well. So I consult with authors in my business and I work with Macmillan, um, managing a brand for one of their imprints.
Wow, what an incredible story. And first of all, let me say congratulations on the rebrand. That's so
Thank
exciting.
you. I love it so much. I'm such a perfectionist, and it took a really long time. It took over a year. And it's, I did write a whole Substack on it about how the process for me actually mirrored a lot of what I ask authors of when they work with me. So that was fun to be on the other side of the coin. Authors come to me when they want their book marketed yesterday, and it's not a yesterday thing, it's a tomorrow thing. So now for me, a year ago, I was like, I'm ready to rebrand. And now a year later, I'm like, the rebrand is here. So there's little things that I can now speak to the things that the people who work with me are curious about. So
That's amazing. So it gave you perspective on the other side of things.
totally,
I love that you're
totally.
calling it the brand of your dreams. I think that's like a whole.
Yeah.
I love that, the brand of my dreams. And yeah, it reminds me of like those. It's like you've been giving all these people makeovers, and now you finally have your own makeover.
Yes,
Yeah, you treat it yourself.
definitely. I
Oh,
love
that's
that.
incredible.
I wrote that in the Substack. Yeah, I said that sometimes you're just too close to something and
Hmm.
you can't do it for yourself. Like that's why authors need beta readers and editors, etc. It's like when you're so siloed into something, you kind of do lose perspective, and it's always helpful to have somebody else kind of be there to support you. So
Right. That's amazing. I'm really curious about how it felt to be on the receiving end of a I read the post, you worked with another company to help you with that branding, and now you're
mhm.
on the receiving end of their advice, some of which you may or may not agree with. I think that's very interesting to
Yeah.
be on that end of it where you don't have full control. You aren't the influencing factor. You're receiving all of this advice, and then you have to decide what are you going to 100% go with? What are you going
Yeah,
to kind of
there was
push
a
back on to
lot
say that's not really not my vision? That seems very
there was a
tricky.
lot of editorial conversation. Fortunately, I was very comfortable providing feedback. But that's also something I request of the authors I work with. I tell them very, very often and very early from our relationship that my job is to bring you to life. It's not to bring you to life through me. So I want them to give me that type of feedback. I want you to say to me, I didn't see it like that, or I
Hmm.
don't want to go that way, or that doesn't feel good. I don't get offended. I don't take work personally because, again, my job is to make you stand out for who you are. And nobody can represent you the way that you can. So I really did try and channel that same feeling for when I was giving my feedback, where it's like, this is supposed to represent me. Great job, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that. I would not talk like that. And now, if I'm supposed to bring this to life in real life, there would be a discrepancy because that's not my style of speaking or whatever. So they were just as receptive as I am with my clients. So that was amazing. There was a lot of reasons I trusted them. Um, and that's something I just always recommend, when you are working with a service provider, especially one that is meant to help you represent yourself, you need to have an extreme trusting relationship. It's more of a partnership than anything. So,
Yeah, I see a lot of parallels with the actual writing, a writer and an editor in that as
totally.
well. If
Yes.
it's not a good fit, um, and if the editor, as you said, if the service provider, it does not have the ultimate goal being to make your work the best it could be for you, or your brand the best it could be for you,
They might not be the
then
right fit.
yeah, yeah, and it could be very dangerous to kind of fall into that and let it
Right.
for a newcomer, for someone who's just going, I'll go with the flow and I'll trust these experts. There are experts out there that aren't the right fit still, even though they have good intentions, it's still not the right fit. And that's so,
It's
yeah.
so true. And I do feel, there is a fine line between what you should push back on and what you should advocate for, and what you should trust that the experts you hired know what they're doing. Um, for example, keeping with the copywriting aspect of it, there were some turns of phrases I know I wouldn't say that did not make me feel good to read on a website, that I felt really strongly about changing those. But the call to actions and the overall messaging, I had to trust that as branding experts, they knew what they were doing when they put together the direction of the language, right? So
Right.
same thing, if I give you a content strategy, you might say to me, I don't feel comfortable being on script, or I don't want to post that often. I might turn around and say, okay, we can change the format. You don't have to do a scripted video, but you do need to trust me with this frequency and this cadence, because this is the sweet spot for what we're trying to accomplish. So there is sort of that fine line between like pushing back and also knowing when to just like step out of your comfort zone and trust. So
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm going to get into that in a little bit. I want to actually pivot before we get even deeper into branding, and I want to ask a few marketing questions.
go for it.
So, actually, one of the ways I discovered you was you made a post on Substack. I think it was called "From Concept to Bookshelf," and it
It's
listed
a
this.
popular one.
It was great. It listed the seven
Thank you.
stages that a book goes through, which is just so interesting for anybody, even if you're not an author. It's just an interesting thing to read. Um, and for me, that when I'm reading the seven stages, and I'm as an author, I'm mostly involved in those earlier stages. But I wanted to talk about some of the latter stages that you mentioned. So you have one of the stages is marketing, and another one of the stages is publicity. And I know to you, they're very different things. But to an author who's just sitting here writing books and doesn't know anything about business or media, didn't go to school for that, for people like me, they kind of feel like the same thing. And yet
Totally.
and yet you have them very different. You have different strategies. So could you tell us a little more about the difference between marketing and publicity? And yeah, anything you would just want to fill in for that for us, for the people that maybe don't know enough about what makes them so unique.
Sure. It's a really important question and something very interesting to discover, because it's actually industry, it's bigger than the industry itself. So regardless of whether you're a product, a service, an author, marketing and publicity are two different things. The reason I wrote that post though is because I feel the publishing industry, even having worked in it for so long, um, it's very gray. It's very gray to know the timeline or what really goes on behind the scenes. It's a very long process. I don't think people realize how long of a process it is to get a book out the door, especially because books go out the door every Tuesday. Um, there's so many books in the world and so many more coming out every single
Hmm.
week. But it is not just like a turnkey process. There's, of course, turnkey procedures, but it has to go through so many steps, through so many departments, so many hands. Marketing is science backed. There's like a mathematical version to marketing, not version, piece to marketing. It's calculated. Marketing has a start date and an end date, so to speak. It is very much the campaign that you use to put your book into the world.
Mm.
So to take it one step backwards, your brand is overall how you represent yourself, what you get known for, how people start to relate to you. Your platform is where they do that. So your platform may be Substack, your platform may be Instagram, TikTok, it may be your website, it may be in person. So
Mm.
you have your brand that comes to life on your platforms. And then marketing, so your brand is sort of buzzing in the background at all times, right? Like you're working on your brand all the time. Marketing has a start date and an end date in your brand strategy. So you may be doing your brand thing, everything, and then you launch your book. Your book goes out into the world. It's pub day, your book is live. You should be marketing before that, but for the sake of this example,
Hmm.
pub day. Pub day is the start of your campaign. And for the next X amount of time, all we talk about is your book. And there's a way that it's being done, because that is marketing, right? It's like this campaign has a title. The title may be your book, it may be an immersive title, but everything about the goal is calculated and backed to achieve sales, right? So there's an exact end of campaign number we're trying to achieve, whether it's an engagement percentage, whether it's a number of pre-orders, sales, whatever it may be. Marketing is campaign driven and has a goal attached to it with a certain amount of time. Publicity is earned/bought media. So
Mm.
Earned media would be something that got picked up by a news cycle. You can't really predict that though. So when we talk publicity, we're talking the team that is writing the press release. We're talking the team that is pitching broadcast channels like the Today Show and Good Morning America. We're talking the people who are trying to get your book covered by the New York Times or Time Out New York, if that's something that makes sense for you. Whatever it may potentially be, publicity is that sort of outward reach to get other people talking about you.
Okay.
Marketing is typically what you're doing for yourself.
That's a really great way to distinguish.
It's a
Yeah,
lot.
that no, but that's perfect. And I love how you wrapped the branding into it as well, because
Yeah, it does all go together just a little differently.
yeah, but it is so foreign for, most of us out there who are just writing these books. This is not a world
Yes.
we ever envisioned joining, It's the writing a book is such a creative pursuit. Getting
And it's
people
a solitary one too.
Yes, it's a solitary
Yeah,
one, and getting people to read your book is such um, a it's a business. It's you become an entrepreneur. It becomes a business.
you do.
You
Yes.
you have to sell yourself. You have to be, as you said, outward reaching. You have to be very social. Um, but all of these pieces, this educational component, the stuff that you're telling us right now, that all gets kind of like assumed. It becomes like assumed knowledge, or even worse, it's just invisible. And so people just release books and they kind of just die because they don't know what to do with it,
Yeah. The
or how much
hardest
work goes
part,
into it.
I will say the hardest part is people know they have to market, but they don't understand that without platform marketing is difficult. So if you don't have, and this is also a point for querying and getting your book picked up. If you don't have a platform that can help market your book, that can help turn your book into a sales machine, um, it's a harder risk to take on you. So I could market a book today, um, and have people be curious about it because I spend a lot of time building my platform. If I went dark for 5 months and then came out and said, hey, buy my book tomorrow, there's going to be a little bit less engagement because there's no trust there and there's no platform there. So when authors are like thrown into the fire saying, okay, go market, but they haven't done the previous work of building platform or figuring out what their brand identity is, that marketing just became a whole lot harder than what it would be if they had some sort of even slow building, but some sort of platform in the background.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And even I recently stumbled across, I was reading Publishers Weekly, I think. Um, I forget what magazine it was, but I came across this quote, media begets media. Have you heard that? I'm sure you probably heard
That's
that
a
in
good
your.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you just have to start creating media and get putting yourself out there and prior to the books coming out and engaging in a
Way
real way.
further. Hmm.
Yeah, and that's all the marketing, publicity stuff that it all kind of, or at least it feeds those engines, and then it
Yeah,
becomes
for sure.
can become a real part. All right, so because you've been doing this for 10 years, over 10 years, what is the most surprising thing that you've learned about marketing? Maybe like when you first went into Simon and Schuster and you had to start really doing this on that level. What surprised you the most about you can either answer like for then what surprised you the most, or what surprises you the most now um with marketing or the industry as a whole?
That's a good question. And I think something that has surprised me about the publishing industry in general is how much falls on the author's shoulders.
Hmm.
This is not a negative by any means. I think it's important for the authors to be involved in their bookmaking process. Um, but I think before I had started, I just assumed everything you saw was done by the industry itself. But we are in a stage right now where authors book their own book tours. Authors are responsible for handling a majority of their own promotional material unless they have like a team behind them. Like the bigger authors have teams behind them. Um, the publishers will do like launch calendars and they understand marketing campaign. They'll make sure the imprint, the mock-ups, all that stuff, like they're obviously responsible for like the visual components of bringing the book to life. But story immersion, all of that, that is something that is more heavily the responsibility of the authors.
Yeah, I like the way I like how you said how you're saying this is not really a negative thing because there's a lot of perceived negativity with all of this,
Mm-hmm.
with the weight that comes along with the marketing and the branding and all of the stuff that authors now need to do, because there are whatever millions of books published each year, and you said there's just so much noise and to get yourself
Mm-hmm.
seen and noticed. But at the same time, um, as you said, it kind of makes the author more invested.
Yeah,
You're in it
and you
more.
should
Like,
be.
yeah, right. But and maybe in the past it might have been easier and less to do for the author, but they're just kind of sitting there passively, just waiting to see what happens, as opposed to this encourages authors to really engage and to build community and to keep that alive and to foster it and to I think that's just like that's pretty amazing that so it's a heavy expectation, but it doesn't have to be negative. It could be there are positives to it on the other
There are a
side.
lot of positives. And I know it is a little stressful for authors, especially because we already said writing is very uh, independent. It's a quiet activity for the most part. Many authors, even like bookmakers in general, are private people. They're working in their solitary space on a
Hmm.
retreat. Like, I'm also a very private person, so some of this is difficult for me as well. But when you approach marketing from a business perspective, when you're like, you said it earlier, when you're like, I'm an entrepreneur and the product I'm selling is my book, it does become a little bit easier to step out of that box. Um, I will say too, I think it's really, aside from the investment of being involved in the process, I think there's something really special to know too that while there are some really huge named authors we can all name who get these multi-figure book deals, who have teams and assistants and managers and everything, we don't have to be that. Like, that's really cool to have a dream like that, but we don't need to be that. We can build a community that's a lot smaller, but a lot of trust involved, and let them help you do the talking. So you don't need to go from 0 to 1 million. You can go from 0 to 100 and really trust those 100 people to help you like multiply, grow, etc. Going viral is cool, but that's not going to always be the answer. And when we strive for that, we miss out on a lot of other micro opportunities that can have a really big impact.
Oh, I love that. I've listened recently to a YouTube video where someone was talking about like, being successful on YouTube. And they said, a thousand, if you have 1,000 loyal fans, 1,000 loyal followers, you can build something real with that. It doesn't need to
Mm-hmm.
be hundreds of thousands. I don't know, that's great advice. Let's switch over to branding,
Sure.
because I know that's your current
My
obsession.
favorite.
Yes. So I want to read your byline for this is part of your new branding package. I want to read your
Go for it.
byline for the listening audience, for the viewing audience. I love it. So your byline reads, "Where storytelling meets strategy, branding, marketing, and creative well-being for authors." And a little while ago, I saw you had a post on your Substack about like keeping your reading life alive and fostering your love of reading. And so I'm seeing a theme here. There's this thread of storytelling in all of the
Mm-hmm.
work that you're doing. So could you talk about a little bit about why that's so important to you, like keeping this idea of like story at the forefront of everything?
Sure. I do it. I really was proud of that when we wrote that byline. Um, the first part that I'm really proud of is the creative well-being piece. I think this is the part that is sort of my practice what you preach moment,
Mm,
where I am not somebody who's connected 24/7. I am not somebody who posts on social media every single day. I do not typically do video, which in a world where it's short form video is a very heavy commitment. I have a pretty engaged following without doing any of those things I just mentioned. Um, could I commit more? The answer is always yes. But the point is, I am very, very strict on my boundaries.
mm.
I think it's just as important to not share something than it is to share something, and finding that balance is huge. So When you tell me that you see a thread through my storytelling and feel that you get to know me through the things that I'm sharing, but there's so much you don't know, that makes me, you didn't say that, I'm saying that makes me so happy because that is my goal. It is to tell stories in a way that feel immersive and open to relationship. The Substack is called Open Book. It is where I get to be myself and open up to everybody in my professional expertise. But I'm also keeping back the personal pieces that I don't want to share. And I'm not doing that from an obnoxious way. Like, I'm not saying I'm not telling you this, but instead I'm fully immersing in the storytelling of the things I am comfortable talking about. And by doing so, you're getting these threads. You're understanding that not only do I work in publishing, but I'm a huge reader. And finding that balance to do both, that creative well-being piece is like, how do I still have my hobby of reading
Mhm.
when I have to read books for work? That is a piece of storytelling I'm interested in sharing. I'm not somebody who shares my workouts. I work out every day, but I'm not, that is not part of my storytelling. So storytelling becomes a lot easier when you decide what you're comfortable with opening up about. And then it just becomes a much, much simpler way to connect. So those Substacks, I then am able to transition into Instagram posts if I want to. There are conversation starters with people either in a book club or professionally or in instances like this. So I think when you're storytelling, it also makes it easier to open up your experiences. Like, you've read some of my writing, which made you feel like we can have a conversation. Um, Even with potential readers, if I were an author, I recommend storytelling in a lot of ways, because if they don't know who you are and they don't really know where you're coming from, and if you're not storytelling the process of getting there and all of these other things, when you then finally say, guess what I did, there's really not an emotional connection there. So the short answer to your question is, I think storytelling provides an emotional connection with the people you're trying to reach. And when done properly, every sentence should not start with the word I. It should be more about everything. When done properly, it can lead to some really valuable opportunities.
And which connects, I love that answer. And that connects to another one of your, this might be my favorite of the things you've written, which is the metaphor, the author brand is a library,
Yeah,
is
you
like
liked
it.
that one?
I did. I loved it. And I told you this before, I think. There's something to do with, my coming to your Substack as an author, as
Uh-huh.
someone who's writing these books and who's just looking to engage with other authors or other people in the industry to learn more about the craft, to learn more about publishing. Um, and stumbling across someone who's a marketing branding expert, which is not in my wheelhouse at all. And then to read a post where you say it's like a library, and then I go, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. I don't need a business degree to understand that. Like,
I'm so
that's,
glad.
yeah, that's putting it in my world. That's putting it in my perspective, and I think that's, I don't know. Could you tell us more about that? Because I love it so much. Like, when you say
Yeah,
author branding is a library, um, tell us what you mean by that.
of course.
Yeah.
Sometimes and I will be transparent before I get into that. Sometimes I struggle with, because everything is not like, you know it and you know it, right? Sometimes I struggle with, is my Substack too redundant? Is it the same type of post over and over? How many times can I tell you you need to have a brand? How many times can I share that this is important? But everybody, and this is something I tell people all the time, you need to read something or see something 7+ times in order to build a relationship with it. Um, and it's going to resonate differently each time you say it, because it might hit somebody at a different moment in their time, or the language may be perfect. So I'm really proud of that one. I'm really glad it resonated for you. What I mean by your author brand is your library is, I want authors to start to think about uh, their brand. As we said, that's in the background, right? So it's what you're known for. It's the sort of categories, so to speak, of what you would be referred to as. So I love to say everybody has a brand before they even go through branding. Like, in your personal life, I'm sure right now you can think of one or two things that somebody has said, oh, Jason, I thought about you when I saw X, Y, and Z, or
Hmm.
this made me think of you, or I knew you would like this. That's sort of your personal brand a little bit, like they know that this is something that's important to you. Or, somebody says, oh my gosh, that is so you. Yeah, it's on brand. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
that's kind of a different way to look at the word branding, right? So everybody has a basis of a personal brand. What they choose to do with it, categorically speaking, is which pieces of that personal brand, including professional, are we moving forward with on your platforms? Now we think about your platforms. And this is where that metaphor starts to come into place. I think in that post, I spoke a lot about Instagram because Instagram had just released new features. So I tied it into that. So I'm going to talk about how that works together for this example. Your personal brand is now the categories in which we're speaking about, we're storytelling about, we're activating platform about. Your book should, of course, and your writing journey should, of course, be part of that conversation. Your Instagram, because we're going with that as an example, is your library. It is your storefront. So your website is essentially your online home. It's sort of like your catch-all for everything. But your Instagram is like a second library. Your Substack is a second home, all of these things where you hope somebody finds you based on the explore pages, the algorithms, all of that fun stuff. You hope they find you on that page. They like what you have to say, the way you've said it. And then they click over. They click to your profile, Substack, Instagram. What they see there is your library. Your portfolio should be a smattering of everything they could get to know. So your categories are almost like the stacks, right? So you get to see, for me, you see how I would market this book, something about creative well-being, something personal. I have a few other series I'm like brainstorming right now. Um, you see on my Substack, I have things broken down into author branding, into book marketing, publishing news, things like that. Um, so you're walking into my library. When you go to either one of my profiles, you are walking into my library. You are browsing through the posts. You are browsing the stacks. You are picking them up. You are reading one. You are opening a post. You are opening a book on a shelf. You are getting to know me and picking what you need, taking what you need, and putting it back. The best libraries keep you in there for a long time, right? You want people to spend time in your library. So having an activated platform, first of all, an activated platform is a good thing, but if there's no cohesiveness to it, if there's no brand behind it, the library is a mess. It's chaotic. Nobody knows what to expect or what to get. So having a brand on an activated platform gives your library a theme. It gives it central meaning. It shows people what types of books they're getting when they come to you. So when you're launching your book, you want your library to be the home of this book. And everything that people see is like, I just need to keep reading. I just need more. And they're reading post after post or engaging with post after post. So that is sort of like what that is all about.
I love that. Yeah, I think yeah. So I think of someone's if you walk into someone's library in the real life,
Mm-hmm.
you look at someone's bookshelf and see what they're reading, see their curated collection.
Yes.
You should get a sense of who they are,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
So to be intentional when you're posting someone when they're reading the stuff that is in your curated collection, they should get a sense of who you are. And if it's not, if it's misleading in any way, if you're if you're posting haphazardly or something like that, then you could unintentionally like I don't know, get the wrong audience or chase the right audience away or anything
Exactly.
to
That's
confuse
exactly right.
people.
It's also important to say that even though it's your library and your platform, your customers, your readers, they go to a library to receive, right? They are going to receive a new book. They want a story. They want to learn something. They want community. You go to a library for many reasons. If somebody comes to your profiles, your libraries, and all they get is I statements or something about you or just buy my book, blah, 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 and there's nothing really in it for them to receive, you are going to turn them away. So that is where that relationship piece comes in. So even if you are giving a call to action to buy my book, I would really like to challenge you to not frame it like that. Like, what can this person receive by buying your book? You don't need to say it in that sort of clearly outlined sentence, but you need to start to emotionally connect storytelling into the reasons that people will stick around and want to support.
I love that. Um,
It all ties together. I use a lot
yeah.
of words, but it all ties
No,
together.
it all makes sense. And I love how I tried to separate this conversation into marketing and
I
branding
know, I'm sorry.
no, but it's all the same. It all feeds together. You can't talk
It
about
does.
them independently. They
It's
all
very hard to market without a brand. And when you have a brand, then you can talk about marketing.
right. Um, I love it. This is so insightful. Okay, so we have the fast round here, and this is how we
All
always
right,
end. Is always how
let's
we
go.
wrap things up. I call it the fast round. You can answer it with one word if you want to. You can elaborate if you want to. It doesn't matter. I just want to ask a couple of quick hitting questions. So the first, what do you enjoy more, marketing or branding?
Branding, 100%.
Because,
I think it's really fun and special to help somebody figure out how they want to be known. Um, because once you know who that is and what that identity is, marketing becomes a lot of fun and it can set the foundation for how we market.
I love that. So maybe in a sense, might feel more important. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Does it feel more important
I
to
do think
help
it's more
someone find
important.
their,
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Because you can have three different brands have the same thing to market and it will be different depending on the different brand identities. So
wow. Yeah. And it's beautiful that you're helping people find their identity too,
it's a lot of fun.
in a real way. I know this is all career based and professional and blah, 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 but you're
It's
kind of
very
helping,
special.
yeah, you're having them tap into something that they haven't discovered themselves. It's really
Thank
cool.
you. I appreciate that.
Okay, next question. What's one part of the publishing industry you struggle with or wish were different or blah, blah, blah?
The speed. It is a
Mhm.
slow behemoth of a machine. And in a lot of ways, it's still pretty old fashioned and they are trying to keep up with the trends, but um, it takes a long time to get something done. So that's in such a fast moving world, that can be a challenge.
Oh, I can't. Yeah, I'm experiencing a little bit of that myself.
Yeah.
But it's yeah, it is. It's very slow. And the other thing about that is a lot of people outside of the industry or people that aren't trying to get published aren't aware.
No, because they
As
see new books every Tuesday, so they just think it's like,
yeah,
it's not.
yeah. So there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's a little tricky. Um, and you can answer this any way you like. The question is, who inspires you? Now you can draw back to childhood. You can kind of connect to someone recently who inspires you today, but just someone who inspires you.
I have a lot of people who I'm inspired by. One of my friends, I could be inspired by them. One of my friends was just recently interviewed in a podcast and she said she makes mistakes for a living. And I'm so
Wow.
inspired by that because it's being open to failure and open to learning. And I feel very strongly that we can continuously be learning, but in a fun way. I think fiction is just as powerful as a learning tool as self-help books are. Um, but so I am definitely inspired by some friends. I have a lot of entrepreneurial friends and mentors that it's really, really powerful to get in a room all together. I'm inspired by both of my parents, who I come from a line of business owners.
Mhm.
Um, and I grew up in a way that I saw hard work uh, being done, but also we always took a vacation. We always had dinner together. So I think that's where that balance and that well-being come in for me is like understanding there's nothing wrong with working hard, but there's also something a little more to life than that. Um, and I'm inspired by my first boss at Simon and Schuster. I have such a strong respect for this man. Um, to this day, he still checks in on me.
Mm,
And when I was leaving him, I literally was about to cry. And he was like, "You have to fly the nest. It's your time. Like, you
wow.
have to go." Um, but he's on, I have his name was Ray, is Ray. He's still alive, obviously. But um, on all of my goals lists and vision boards, it says "Be like Ray," just because he was a really fantastic boss. I felt very lucky to have him. And just the way that he managed a team. Also, his team was extremely productive. The way he got work done, the way he presented himself, I really admired from a professional standpoint. And also that he's like maintained his private life too. So in a world right now where I feel like we cross a lot of boundaries with people because of just it's a much more informal world, I respected the whole go to work, wear a suit, we don't need to know what goes on afterwards kind of mentality.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. Okay, two more. If you could offer one piece of marketing or branding advice to aspiring writers, what would it be? You can go
The
either way.
Substack that will be written for next week. Just start now. It doesn't matter if
Oh,
you're
great.
in the middle. Um, it doesn't matter. I mean, everybody is in the middle of something. Like this is not the beginning of your story, but don't be so worried about backtracking to the beginning of your story to get out there. I want to challenge everybody to start in the middle. Like start today, start tomorrow, start exactly where you're at and worry about the storytelling catch up in the process. So put it out there. Let people be a little confused. That's okay. But build from it. See what types of questions come up. See as you read it back, if you have any questions you would have liked to fill in the gaps and use that as your inspiration to move forward. So let's not wait. It's a lesson for myself also. We don't have to give the backstory up front. We can just start where we're at.
Such great advice, and I look forward to reading that post.
Thanks.
Okay, final question, and then we'll wrap up. Name a book that changed your life. And this could be childhood. This could be yesterday you read it. It could be whatever.
I'm a big reader, so there's a lot of ways I can go with this. But a book that I would say changed my life. People make fun of me for this. I'm going to give you two because I read them both every single year back to back.
Oh wow.
Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights and Stephen Bartlett's Happy Sexy Millionaire. Um, I'm a huge fiction reader. I'm not a big self-help reader. I've tried numerous times. Um, I love Green Lights. I love Matthew McConaughey from this. He's such a wacky man. Um, but if you haven't read Green Lights, I always love to recommend it because it's about changing your perception in order to receive more yeses than nos from you. So, for example, he was known as a rom-com guy and it wasn't feeling fulfilling for him anymore. It was feeling quote unquote like a red light in his path to fulfillment. So he pulled the brakes and he stopped doing rom-coms, started saying no, and he made Dallas Buyers Club. And
Mm.
it took a long time and he tells the whole story about it, but that movie felt like a green light for him. That was where he felt inspired to be going. So I think it's really powerful of a mentality to start to not just live your life to check the boxes or to get the paycheck, which we all need, but to also maintain an internal checkpoint system with, am I happy? Am I doing this in a way that will, make me proud and inspired and fulfilled? And then Happy Sexy Millionaire is pretty much the same concept. It's pretty much about it's the same author is the same person who hosts the Diary of a CEO podcast, which is very popular. Um, and he is one of my like inspirational mentors
Mm.
as well. And this book is pretty much about he became a millionaire and he did the red car and all that stuff no longer felt important to him and how he started to again achieve fulfillment and happiness. And so I think for me there's like a through line of success equals life versus plus business, not one or the other. And making sure we stay happy and that we're doing well for the environment and everything else. So there's some really good nuggets in there about, if you had a what are those things called where they have the sand going through them?
An hourglass.
An hourglass. If you had an hourglass on your desk and it was for the amount of time you have in your life, you would probably be doing things a little bit differently.
Oh
And
yeah.
we have an invisible one, but we sit there and we scroll for 30 minutes or we don't do things that are very meaningful. So It's not about not having downtime, but it's about being like intentionally having downtime. And I love both of those concepts of like intentional living for more than, just showing up online or your career, just for yourself and for your happiness.
Yeah, I've never read, I haven't read either of those books. They sound great.
I
Uh,
love them both.
and I sense the through line as well, and with your love of branding,
Yeah.
because branding is finding and finding kind of like the identity in your current circumstances. As we said
Yeah, for sure.
at the start of this talk, the branding, you kind of need to rebrand. Like in 10 years, you might need to rebrand again if you
Exactly.
see it drifting from how you identify what you're doing, your work, all that stuff. So it's kind of like these check-ins, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
And the
Oh,
more community you have, the more you can do in public too, which makes it fun.
perfect. Okay, this has been so fun. Thank you for talking. Before we go, is there anything you want to like plug or share with us? Something, upcoming projects, anything you want to mention?
Um, no, I'm really grateful for this. Thank you for having me. Most of my platform, including my services, are all on my website, which is now live, jessicasorentino.com. I am primarily interested in community building and educating you. So if there's a reason you want to work with me, I'm so happy to hear from you. But more importantly, I hope you learn from me and that you feel like you can ask questions and give me an opportunity to support you in your work as well. So
Perfect. And yeah, so jessicasorrentino.com, and her Substack is called Open Book. I recommend both of those things. She's
thank you. Of
phenomenal. Thank you so much, Jessica, for coming and sharing all of your wisdom with us today.
course. So good to see you. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, bye. Thanks for watching The Right Thing. If you're interested in learning more about what we talked about in today's podcast, you can head over to Substack to check out my newsletter at jasonearhart.substack.com for an even deeper look into the writer's journey. Also, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you can check out all the things we'll be talking about in the coming weeks. We'll be back next time with another interview, offering more insights to take your craft to the next level. Until then, just keep writing.